This is Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education series, brought to you by McMillan Paston Smith Architecture.
On this episode of the Future of K-12 Education, we welcome two individuals, Dr. Randall Gary and Mr. Ryan Cloonan. Dr. Randall Gary is the Superintendent of Spartanburg District 5, a position that he's held since 2019. Prior to that, Dr. Gary served as Lexington County School District 3 Superintendent. Dr. Gary is a proven instructional leader with experience and skills in leadership development, management, goal setting, communication, and collaboration. Spartanburg 5 is one of the top performing districts in the Southeast in terms of academic achievement, the arts, leadership, magnet programs, technology, and innovation for their students. Under Dr. Gary's leadership, Spartanburg 5 has maintained its student-centered culture focused on positive and measurable outcomes for their students, staff, and community. Also joining us is Mr. Ryan Cloonan. Ryan is the Chief of Operations for the district. He's also a graduate of Spartanburg District 5 and James F. Byrnes High School specifically for the district. Prior to joining the district, Ryan had 15 years of experience as an architect, a planner, and a project manager, primarily in educational facility design in the region. Today, we'll focus on one high-value and complex project in the district, the rebuilding of James F. Byrnes High School. It's a tremendous example of revitalizing a long-standing campus. The trick here is that the district accomplished this with a vision, a master plan, and major construction, all while students continued to learn and perform during its transformation on campus. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Dr. Gary, could you start us off? Could you tell us a little bit about Spartanburg 5 and your time with the district?
Spartanburg School District, well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate being invited to be a part of this podcast. Spartanburg District 5 is an outstanding school district. I have, and that's various ways you can measure that. You talked a little bit about our instructional performance, which is very important. We've had success in athletics. We've had success in the arts. We're excited this year that our marching band was the state champions in Class 6A for the very first year of having Class 6A. So we've had lots of successes. One of the biggest challenges that we've had over the past 6 years, which I've been here, has been keeping up with and managing the growth in our district. We're actually in the midst of our third enrollment study since I've been in the district. And what it's saying is that we're going to continue to grow and grow quickly in speeds greater than what we've seen in the past. So a lot of great things going on. So we're really excited about it. Great things happening at Byrnes High School, which is one of the construction projects that we've just completed a few, and that's still going on. And we're excited, and we know we're going to have a lot more ahead of us.
No, that's great. And certainly one of the highest growth areas, not only in South Carolina, but the Southeast region as well. You do continue to grow in tremendous ways. And I think that's a testament to the programs that you guys have created there in terms of education and the economic environment around you. So that's wonderful news. You know, thinking back on Dr. Gary, Byrnes High School specifically, I know you were involved in kind of the initial vision. But one question about that is, you know, what challenges were you and the district really trying to solve initially when you were thinking about the vision of Byrnes High School as a project?
The rebuilding of Byrnes High School happened in 3 separate phases over several years. And the initial phase, it was prior to me coming here, prior to my time here. But I've been here long enough to know that the issues were, it was an aging school, that we were trying to teach modern or teaching education using modern technology in a building that really wasn't designed for that. So a couple things we need to do. One, we need to just update our facility. Number 2, one of the biggest things is we needed to update it to accommodate the growth. We talked about being one of the fastest growing districts, and over the past 20 years, our district has more than doubled in size. And that's just since 2000. Well, this school was built in 1955. And just a few years ago, we were a 3A high school, then we became 4A, now we're 5A. So in addition to modernization, number 2 was managing and keeping up with the growth. And of course, the other challenge was just how do we do this on a school site that with limitations. And by that, I mean our space. I mean, we're one of the largest high schools in the state with 60 plus acres to have everything to teach in excess of 2,300 students, to have football, track, volleyball, lacrosse, all these other things. And how do we do that on such a tight? So there were several challenges that we had to address on this type facility. So, but obviously leading that was just the challenge of a modernized schooling environment for the new technology, the new things that we're doing with kids, whether it's computing, one-to-one technology, esports, no matter what it is, but managing the growth as well.
That's a great understanding of kind of the big problems. Two categories, right? You've got a tremendous growth, and then the directive to kind of modernize based on how you probably teach today versus that 1950s era building. As you came on board and looking at phase 2 and phase 3, were there things in the design of the new sections of this facility that really prioritize those educational goals to make it more of a modern environment in your view?
Well, yes. I mean, when you're talking about a library versus a media center, as we made decisions as to what was going to be in phase 2, we knew there were certain areas that we needed right now to have to prepare for demolition in phase 3, but that were going to be very important and could not be taught in a temporary area. For example, we have some portables over there. And portables, I mean, for temporary, they make good classrooms, but there's certain things that you can't teach there, like science labs. So we were very intentional about when we started designing phase 2, let's put these science labs here, let's put our media center, let's have the guts of the school, our main office, because when it comes time for phase 3, we got to start a demolition plan for phase 3. But in order to demolish these areas of the school and continue instruction at a high level, we're going to have all these other places intact. Our media center, our science labs, other areas too, other traditional classrooms, and knowing in part 3, a lot of those specialized areas are going to be upgraded as well.
Yeah, it's a big puzzle board, is it not? Just to try to move people around safely while you figure out how to serve the new construction in addition to the academic calendar. With something like a 3-phase project on a major campus. I think for some of our listeners, 2,300 student high school, if you're not aware, is a very, very large high school campus. So when you think of that construction planning, and then in your role as kind of looking out for minimizing that disruption of student performance and student calendar, were there some things that you we're thinking about from a challenge standpoint in the design that you had to really understand at the very beginning of the project?
When you say 2,300 students, you're talking about in today's numbers. But we have to go back to when phase 1 was designed in 2015, 2016, or maybe 2017. Those numbers were lower than that, but it was still growing very rapidly. And that's just 10th through 12th grade numbers. Which I think is another significant difference than a regular 9th through 12th high school. But when Byrnes was master planned for phase 1 through 3, it was really phase 1 through 4 at that time. When we started the phase 2 design, which was 4 years after phase 1 completed, the master plan was basically expired. It was no good. The district had grown so much, so rapidly that the needs and the way that they function had changed from the first master plan. And so we went through and remaster planned it based on the new needs for the district in 2021. The way that it was designed in phase 1, really, if we had to go back and do it again, probably would have done it a little bit differently based on what we know now for how the district operates and how the growth that we've had here. And so in phase 2, we had to go kind of make up for some of that information that we did not know in 2016, 2015 when phase 1 was designed. So in the design of phase 2 and phase 3, in the new master plan, we had to do what Dr. Gary was just describing. We had to figure out how are we going to put the media center into phase 2, and how are we going to have X number of science labs so that space can be built while the remaining campus stays active, and they can continue to have their science classes. They can still use the current media center. They can still use their front office. But when phase 2 is completed, now those areas can be demolished and everyone can be moved into the new building. The way the sequencing worked was very difficult in that regard because of how the master plan changed. And I don't think that's normal for an on-site replacement project. I think you typically would have a completed master plan. You've got your plan in place, and then you hit the ground running. But we had to back up and punt and rework the master plan.
Sure.
If I can add, I think that there are a couple of reasons why, some of which he hit on already, why that master plan changed is one, it was 2016 when this approximately when this project started. And now here we are in the third phase of it, and it's 2025 with the movement of 2026. So we're talking about 10 years. So even whether it's the way we teach, the way we operate schools, or the way schools are designed has changed in 10 years. So in addition to that, what has also changed in 10 years are our projections for how many students may be in our district that is continuing to grow. Those same projected numbers in 2016 weren't matching our projected numbers that we're seeing now, or what may be coming this way in the next 5 to 10 years. Second thing that made us have to phase is the two primary things. One was being on a landlocked campus. We talked a little bit about that, but the other is just the amount of money that it costs to build a high school. And there was a bond referendum that was pursued in about 2015-16 that was unsuccessful. And because of that, we knew we could not build the entire school at that point in time. So they built that phase 1. Fortunately, in 2021, we had a successful bond referendum. And with that, we were able to fund phase 2, which is completed, and most of phase 3, which is in process right now. So those are some of the things that led to a change. So over 10 years, that initial master plan, which was a great master plan at the time, has changed so much. When it was designed 10 years ago, there was no esports arena that was in that design. Esports wasn't a big thing. When it was designed 10 years ago, we probably did not have a third gymnasium. I don't believe, did we? No, we did not. Yeah. So, but our needs have changed. As we continue to add programs and sports and cheers and competition cheers and dance teams. It's more than just the enrollment at the school. It's the number of things that we have to accommodate that led to a lot of those changes.
I think that's a tremendous point that I think everybody kind of needs to know, especially when they're thinking about a project like this, is that you can't just start and have one plan if you're going to do it over a long period of time. Is you've kind of eventually and continuously update your initial suppositions and update that plan as you go along in time. And Ryan, I know you worked on that most intently. I wonder if you might just maybe identify the various phases within the overall project. Maybe that's a good way to talk about what is phase 1, what is phase 2, and what is phase 3.
Sure. Yeah, phase 1. I was not part of the design of phase 1, but I do know it very well. So phase 1 consisted of, I think it was around 100,000 square feet. It was a 3-story building. It had 4 science labs, a lot of classrooms. I can't remember the total number of classrooms, a seminar room, and a Rebel Cafe to give a secondary location for students to go and grab some lunch. Phase 2 consisted of 11 science labs. It initially was going to be 8. And I think that's an important piece to talk about how we were flexible and kind of nimble in changing the plan as we went along. So phase 2 included 11 science labs, the media center, the front office suite, 1 STEM lab, and 1 life skills lab, or life skills classroom rather. And then I wish I had the total number of classrooms, but several classrooms in phase 2. And then it also included our entire IT area, which was another area that was not in the master plan, but one that we had to include in phase 2. When you think about the moving pieces and parts of what's going to be demolished, IT had to have somewhere to go. And so that was included in phase 2 as well. Phase 2 was about 125,000 square feet. Phase 3, I believe, is 135,000 square feet. And phase 3 consists of 42 classrooms, 2 more science labs, a guidance suite, 4 art classrooms, an orchestra, a chorus room, a drama, a black box drama theater, and a dance classroom. And in addition, we've added another Rebel Cafe, which will be on the opposite side of campus. So that gives a third option for lunch.
With all three of those phases, that has tremendously changed the character of the building and the campus overall. I wonder if you might speak a little bit to that.
Sure. Yeah. So Byrnes High School was originally built in the 50s, and it was built right on Main Street in Duncan, and it was very, very close to the front road, to the main road. And phase 1 was built in the back side. It really connected our gym that was built in 2000. And so phase 1 made a connection from the gym to the main building, and then added some more space around the back side of it. So it was on the back side of the building, and most people couldn't see it from the road. But phase 2, because of the way the sequencing worked out and where the existing science labs and media center were located, phase 2 could only be built in one spot, and that happened to be right in the middle of campus. And I think ideally you don't want to build an addition in the middle of an active high school campus. But we really didn't have a choice because of being landlocked, as Dr. Gary's mentioned. So we had to demolish 75,000 square feet of mostly building that was built in the 50s and build phase 2 right in the middle. And we had to create circulation paths that were exterior, but allowed students to get from one side of the building to the other side and walking around construction. Phase 3 is actually being built in what I've described as 2 different construction locations, two construction projects almost. They're on either side of the phase 2 construction. On the right and left side, we've got 2-story wings. The wing on the eastern portion will connect our fine arts building, and the wing on the western portion will connect our cafeteria and our phase 2 buildings together. And so what we've got right now is our fine arts and our band room is severed from the remaining campus. And we can talk a little bit later about how we get students from one point to the other, but the end result will end up being from the front Main Street side of Byrnes High School, what will appear to be a brand new campus. The Fine Art Building was built in 2009. The cafeteria was built in 1995. However, we're going to have an extension, an addition to the cafeteria, so that front will now look new. And then all of phase 3 and all of phase 2 will be out the front main entrance. And so again, the whole front of campus will look brand new, as well as the rear side of campus too now.
That's great. I mean, I know this specifically is that it's taken a lot to get there. From a circulation standpoint during construction. That's been an evolving kind of condition for you guys, of course. But I'm wondering with the opening of phase 2 and what you're seeing in phase 3, what are the biggest improvements on the interior of the facility in comparison to what you had previously in the previous building? Are there things that you're seeing improvements on to date, or are you're anticipating in the final completion of phase 3?
Well, we have more opportunities to get from one side of the building to the other without going outside. The number one thing we have to do is the safety of our kids. And the more we can keep them inside of that building, the better. In our previous building, because of the different segments that were built at different times, you have to go outside to get to this location, outside to get to another location. To have that total building that you can get from one side to the other is something we're looking forward to. We talked a little bit earlier about the old media center, and which was, they called them libraries during that time. And there's a big difference between the capabilities in that media center / library than what we have now. We have a lot more natural light. There was absolutely, I don't think, none in our last building. It was a dark and dreary place to be. And I'm sure when it was built in the 50s, it was a nice library. But now we have lots of natural light coming in. We have space. We have breakout rooms within our media center. We have the technology that was designed for that location, not retrofitted over time. Next to that, we also have the production lab. We can film video and teach that to kids and those types of things. A lot of that capability we probably could have done it in the old building, but it would have, it wouldn't have been a place that was designed for that. We'd had to knock a wall out and make it bigger, run some drops for some electricity to come through, have some other lighting come through. But to be able to create a space designed for that is outstanding. In addition, we talked about the science labs and rebuilding science labs. Although we had labs before, but those labs, they were dreary. They were older buildings, and just in time, if you're in a building that was built in 1955, and not all of it was, there was some upgrades, it begins to look and feel like a building that was built in 1955. So it's a more updated, more well-lit, more modernized area for kids to be able to do whatever they need to do as far as learning. And I think I can equate our science lab to some of the colleges. There's things that we can do. We can do everything a kid needs to do in those labs. So between the technology, our labs, in phase one, of course, so they had the Rebel Cafe, which is a second place for students to eat, and that was very helpful in a growing campus. And Mr. Cloonan has talked a little bit about in phase three, with our continued growth, expanding our cafeteria dining hall area and adding even a third space. So yes, to answer immediately, we have seen some outstanding improvements. And one that can't go with what I don't want to overlook is just the safety of our main entrances. They're just designed better now. They're designed to accommodate the weapons detection systems that may be there. They're designed to lock people out so they can't go beyond the lobby without being buzzed in or taken beyond a certain point. And that's one of the things. The schools are being designed so differently now than they were not just the 50s and the 90s, but 10 years ago when we designed this project. So although it's a challenge that has taken 10 years, and that master plan has changed a lot and it's cost more money to do it this way. Had we designed all of this 10 years ago, there would have been some things that we might be saying, wow, I wish we had thought about this, because there's so much has changed just within safety, which we hadn't talked a whole lot about.
One thing that, as you were talking, Dr. Gary, one thing I might ask Ryan to put on his architect and planner hat, what are some of the spaces on the inside that might be a little bit more attuned to how students learn or interact today? I know that there are collaborative areas. There's a variety of space. Are there any attributes that you would recommend that folks really think about when they're talking about either new school construction in a high school context, or additions to their current high schools?
The biggest attribute of Byrnes High School that sticks out to me, other than learning spaces, is the hallways, the width of the hallways. Especially when you have a campus of 2,300 students that are moving back and forth constantly throughout the day. And so our main hallway is 20 feet wide when you come into Byrnes. It's very wide and open and two-story. And the remaining hallways are 14 feet wide. I honestly think that if I had been able to do it again and the budget allowed it, I would have went a little wider than 14. Because even with 2,300 students, I think it does get tight during some class change. But in speaking of the learning environment, our classrooms are upfitted with the best technology you can get. Our IT director, Sam Mazzina, does a great job of giving the teachers what they need in that respect. We've got shading devices that are needed to keep out glare. We've got dimmable lights at the teaching wall where those are needed. Classes like our STEM lab have overhead power. They've got water, ample storage. We went with a sealed concrete floor in the STEM lab so they could do a myriad of activities depending on whatever changes in the curriculum. One room that I really learned a lot while designing was the life skills lab. I had no idea really what was needed to teach students specific life skills like cooking and washing clothes and making a bed, using the bathroom, things like that. And so putting in residential kitchen, for instance, while we don't typically do that in commercial design or in K-12 design, we did it here, and it's been great for them to have that. I'm not sure I can expand on anything more that Dr. Gary said about the media center or the science labs, but they are really phenomenal spaces. The science labs are larger than our last science labs. I will say that while the science labs that we used to have worked well and they accommodated the students, The ones we have now are lecture labs. So we've got room for students to sit in desks and to be instructed, but then they have the lab portion in the same room where they can go and apply what they've learned. So that's really cool to see and see them using it the right way.
Obviously, we talked a little bit about safety more from the standpoint of our entrances. And many schools are designing entrances so they can accommodate whether it's a weapons detection system or security guard or whatever. And we've done that as well. But in addition to safety during the construction project was very important. And it probably included more fencing than I've seen in my life. But it was important to separate our construction projects from pedestrians, from kids, from traffic, et cetera. And Mr. Cloonan talked a little bit about just getting kids from one side of the campus to the other on rainy days. We get a few of those. Some of these areas are covered walkways that have fencing on both sides. Some are uncovered with fencing on both sides, getting kids from the parking lot to inside the school. But to make sure that we're able to separate our instructional spaces from our construction spaces is very important.
So he mentioned the fencing. Obviously, as an architect, we had to work very closely with OSF to provide safe egress from the building away from the construction areas. In some of these areas, they are egressing directly through construction. So we had to design and construct fire-rated tunnels. As I mentioned earlier, our fine arts building is severed from the main campus. So we have fencing on two sides of a sidewalk, and our band students will file from the main campus down the fenced tunnel to the fine arts building, back and forth all day long. When they're doing this, they're crossing two separate construction entrances. And so we've worked closely with McKnight Construction to have someone on staff who will essentially man that gate to make sure that it's safe for construction to enter or exit and that students have first priority. That's just on the outside of the building as far as safety goes, but inside we've got construction barriers where the building is right adjacent to an addition. Those barriers are vital to keeping students on the inside safe, students who don't have any idea of what's happening behind that wall safe. So that's very important to have the proper barrier there. And then before construction started, we even went to the principal and to the district office to talk through emergency protocols. How do students get out of the building for drills, fire drills, lockdown drills, or any other drills that they have to do on a monthly or quarterly basis. And so we worked with them to develop those paths safely to get out of the building and back into the building without disrupting their day or without disrupting construction.
Well, and I think that's a good point too. You're talking about not only your leadership there, the school's leadership, and understanding the parent and the student circulation within the campus, but you're probably meeting with the contractor and the design team even during construction to make sure everything is being followed from a protocol standpoint, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we have our OAC meetings weekly, and pretty much weekly I'm asking them to watch the gates, close the gates, make sure someone's there on staff all the time. We are constantly talking about safety with them.
And I think that communication between, whether that's our district, our school, the contractors, architects is very important, not just for the overall vision, but just for the daily operations. When you talk about safety, when you talk about coordinated emergency drill, when you talk about stopping traffic so cement trucks can get in and buses can exit, all that. And if there's a change, if there's a half-day schedule, if there's an early release schedule, all those types of things, each thing at the school has the potential to impact something with the construction project and vice versa. And also part of that is if there is testing or anything that's going on. There have been times we've coordinated with the construction company to say, hey, we have some end of course testing. Is it possible that you can do these projects that make a lot of noise after 2 o'clock or will they come in early or most recently over spring break, they put a giant crane that Ryan referenced together over spring break and cut down some huge trees, some things they knew that kids weren't there, students weren't there, and a little bit safer and probably easier for them to do those things when there were no other, there was nothing else going on that campus.
Byrnes High School is a tremendously complex project. So taking that master plan, continuing to update that master plan based on the facts in the field as those change through time to it truly is going to be a modern campus, a tremendous school for everybody to see in your community and beyond, for sure. I wonder from both of you, is there for other districts who are facing the same challenges? There are a lot of districts like that in the Southeast that have high growth. Things are continuing to change, and their schools need either renovation, addition, or modernization in some form or fashion. For those folks that are thinking about a project like this, are there any kind of big lessons learned now that you look back on that project 10 years ago, starting that 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, that you would like to share to get others thinking about the design of their facilities overall? Any lessons learned?
As we designed classroom spaces, making sure that we're designing them that if at some point in time our curriculum changes, the course offerings change, that we can easily convert that space to use it for something else. I think he talked a little bit about one of our STEM labs or our Project Lead the Way, which is real big now. He talked about the flooring that's in there. We had the electrical drop and the ceiling. But if at some point, and I don't see it happening anytime soon, hopefully not, but at some point we need to use that classroom for something else. It's of the size and the design so that we can easily convert that for some other purpose. So I think you need to don't necessarily design a school just for the program that you have right now. But if that programming changes at any point in time, how can you use those spaces in order to accommodate your new programming?
Yeah, and I would add to that, similar to what Dr. Gary is saying, is that I think one phrase that I heard a lot, and I've continued to hear sometimes, is this is the way we've always done it. And that's a dangerous phrase to use in the design world or in business or anywhere really in general. I think some advice I would give is, one, we were benefited from having someone like Dr. Gary to lead us. When I say us, the design team, when I was on that side of the table, having a more of a visionary mindset and looking to the future of what can be, but what don't just settle for what we think we need right now. Don't just look at numbers and number of students for the seating capacity, but what type of curriculum do they need in the future? What spaces do we need? That's why we have a third gym. An auxiliary gym, and it's not just a gym for PE. It's a competition space, and it's really labeled as a multi-purpose space, so they can be used for professional development. It can be used for large meetings and gatherings. It can be used for assemblies or competitions. So that's one piece: is have a visionary at the table with you. The second, I don't mean to be this a plug for architects or contractors, but you got to have a good architect that can think long-term and can master plan all the spaces you need and can think through those 4, 5, 6, maybe in our case, 10-year time frame, but be flexible enough to make changes when those arise. And then have a good contractor that can work with you along the whole step of the way, that can think through those different phases. Because you can put it all on paper, but until that big crane shows up out there that just showed up this past week during spring break, you're not really sure what you're going to get. But have a contractor that can be flexible as well and be communicative to you along the way.
I think one thing, and it's kind of not necessarily an answer to that question, it's almost a changing of gears. I just think it's important for anyone that's listening to understand. They've heard talk about a third eating area. They've heard us talk about a third gymnasium, and they're like, wow, we've got 2,300 kids. We don't have that. But one of the things, and Ryan mentioned it earlier, we still talk about upwards of 2,300 kids on that campus. That's today in grades 10 through 12. Now, we have a ninth grade campus that's across the street. So when we're talking about needing all these areas, there are certain classes that those ninth graders come over to our main campus, Byrnes campus, to take. So we need these, and they also participate in all these athletic events and everything. So it's more than just those 2,400 kids on that campus right now. And the school, the phase 3 part of it, its completion is going to be, the capacity is going to be about what?
3,350 or so. Okay,
so it's going to be well over 3,000 we're building for. So we are anticipating a lot of additional growth to that school in the coming years, which is why we have all these other areas, because we may not fill them all now, and we don't want to fill them all now, because that's a problem if we do. the way that the growth is continuing. But we know we will grow into these spaces and very possibly beyond.
I've got one final question for both of you, and I'm interested to hear the answer to it. Is what are you most excited about on opening day of Phase 3?
I'm excited about one. Being complete with the construction at Byrnes High School. It's been something going on there for the past 4 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we have a separate project behind it on that campus where we're building a new football stadium. We hadn't talked about that. So we're excited about that, which will be done in 2025, of course, Phase 3 in 2026. I'm also excited to be under one roof. Because we've talked a whole lot about having the kids under one roof, but one of the big adjustments we've had to make is we talked about a little bit about getting kids from one place to another, but it's more than just getting kids from one place to another during the school day. We've had limitations as far as parking is concerned because we have to have lay down space for construction. But in addition to that, we've had to change our routes where kids come into school. We've had to change our parent drop-off routes, how they come into school. We've had to change the route or the location buses come in and drop off. So to finally complete this project and get to I'm going to say a finalized plan of what our completed vision will look like, that's going to have a good flow of traffic, but not just pedestrian traffic during the day, but it's going to have a good flow of buses and students and parents and athletic events and all that stuff. I know that campus is going to look a lot better, but it's going to operate a lot more efficiently and flow better. So we are definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, I would echo very much what Dr. Gary said. I'm looking forward to seeing the construction completed for a couple of reasons. You mentioned at the beginning, Ben, that I'm a graduate of Byrnes High School. And so this is home for me. And so to be a part of the design process and then to be a part of the construction process and managing the facility and going from the drawing, putting on paper to seeing it completed, I'm very excited just from the architecture side of me to see that done. But our staff, our the principal over there and on all of our staff and our students have been through so much on that campus. There will be students who have come into Byrnes High School and graduated, and the only thing they have seen is construction, through their 4 years. And so they've been through so much and they deserve to have a completed, beautiful, state-of-the-art school. So I can't wait to see that part of it, see the students using it and the staff getting to kind of reap the benefits of everything they've been through over the last several years. And then our community, Dr. Gary's talking about all that our community does around here, how active that campus is. I think it's going to be but we're one high school district. And so I think this district, Spartanburg 5, deserves to have the best high school. And this will be a great step towards that, including the stadium being on that campus. It's going to be an incredible campus for them to use for graduation, for sporting events, for parents coming into the school on a daily basis, and of course for our students. And then last, I have 2 kids that are going through this district, and my daughter will start there when the project is complete. And so I'm excited to see them reap the benefits of all that I've kind of gone through and the district has gone through in creating this high school. So I cannot wait to see them go through it as well.
Well, that's great. And I really appreciate you guys sharing all of the different components to kind of get you to the finish line here. So thank you for your time today. We're looking forward to the completion of the project. It's going to be a wonderful representation of all of the things that make Spartanburg 5 what it is. So really thank you again for your time and looking forward to that opening day.
We're looking forward to it too.
Thank you very much for having us.
This has been a really good conversation with school district leaders on the additions and renovations and really the rehabilitation of high school campuses. It's an important topic and one that I think other districts can learn from as well. We are excited about the project being complete, but we're also excited about all of the other projects that we have underway, specifically in advisory services for K-12 environments. Next time, we'll be talking about advisory services and planning services. Those are the real key components of getting to the end result of a master plan and improving the schools for the future.
Thanks for tuning in to Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education series. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode.